from dinging, but I can't figure out how to do it. Good afternoon. This is Denise Simmons, and I'm so pleased to have you with us this afternoon as we participate in this 5-part series of COVID-19 in the Black community. Again, I'm Denise Simmons, former mayor of the city of Cambridge and current city councilor, but most importantly, the pleased to be co-moderator with my colleague, Manikka Bowman, Vice Chair of the Cambridge School Committee. As I said earlier, this is the 4th of a 5-part series of really kind of looking at COVID-19 and its impact on the Black community. This week, today, we're going to be talking about how COVID-19 has been affecting the Black business community. And we have some extraordinary speakers with us this afternoon. You know, as a Black business owner myself and many others around me, COVID-19 has had a real, not even an interesting, I would say devastating effect on our community as a Black business community. And so Vice Chair Bowman, co-moderators, we got together and started thinking about, so how can we bring this conversation to the larger community? And so we did that. And today we have 4 very good, very important, phenomenal speakers. And I'm going to introduce them by name, and then I'm going to turn it over to them to give a brief introduction of themselves and what they do, their organization or their business. But before I do that, I need for you to hear from my esteemed and capable co-moderator, Manikka Bowman. Manikka, over to you.
Thank you, Denise. I'm elated to have this conversation today. People that know me well know that I am a woman that wear many hats. So in addition to being on the school committee and being very passionate about public education, I'm also a clergy woman. And I am also very much deeply involved in land use and development through my job with the Urban Land Institute. So I'm very passionate about issues around economic development, particularly in the context of Black people. So I'm elated to have this conversation and can't wait to dig into it with our panel.
Thanks, Manikka. So let's get started. Today we have with us Pearson from Simply Aaron's. We have Mike Monestein from the Cambridge Business Improvement District. We have Sagun Idawu from the BECMA. I have to see it in my mind, the Black Economic Commission of Massachusetts, and we have former Vice Mayor and owner of La Fabrica restaurant, Dennis Benzan. Welcome all. But before you get, I always say you should start by saying your thanks, and I did not do that. This program is being brought to you with the help and support of CCTV, and I want to thank all of them, Susan Fleischman, Marissa Grooms, and Sean, for all the help that they give us to make sure this program is airing every other week. So thank you. So let's start with you, Aaron. Tell us a little bit, what made you get into business? No, before you go into that, tell me a little bit about who you are, Aaron. So Aaron, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks, everyone. Hello?
We hear you.
Oh, okay. Didn't know if you could hear me. Hi, I'm Erin Pearson. I am a Canterbridgian. I've been in Cambridge for the last 50 years. Schooled in Cambridge and whatnot, and I still live in Cambridge. I have a business called Simply Aaron's Unisex Hair Salon, where we service clients, and what we do is really focus on hair and scalp care. The other thing that we do is we bring women that are Black into our salon one Sunday a month, amid COVID, but one Sunday a month to talk to Black women about health issues that we have that are different from other women, and how we can get the attention that we need and be able to learn how to speak to the doctors and professionals that we go see and the specialists in the health areas that are affecting us. So we've been doing community conversations for the past maybe 10 years. Mm-hmm. So yeah, between like taking care of people's well-being, because at the hair salon, you go in for a laugh, you go in to communicate with people in the community and getting your hair done and feeling good and looking good. We also hit it on the health end as well.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much. Dennis, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, first of all, Madam Mayor, I just want to thank you for convening this meeting, Manikka, and thank all the other panelists. So I grew up in the city as Erin did, and went to the Cambridge, actually plus a SAC, and went to Cambridge Public Schools, went out to Howard University, and have a law degree from Roger Williams School of Law in Rhode Island. So here in the city of Cambridge right now, I operate La Fabrica Central Restaurant, Jazz Lounge. I'm also a founding member of the Western Front, which is a company that will be operating adult use cannabis, hopefully both here in the city of Cambridge and in Chelsea. And I've been a practicing attorney now for about 15 years here in the city of Cambridge. So essentially I operate 3 businesses in this city. And I'm just delighted to be here to share my thoughts.
And I want to thank you for being with us. Mike, tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Michael Monesteem. I'm the Executive Director of the Central Square Business Improvement District, newly formed organization. Prior, I was the ED of the Central Square Business Association, which had been around for 80 plus years as a networking platform, bringing businesses together within Central Square. While I'm not just a kid from Cambridge, I grew up in Jamaica Plain, Eggleston Square, a serial entrepreneur myself, so understand a lot of the struggles and challenges that the business community faces here in Cambridge. And prior to COVID, through COVID, have been working closely to business owners who who have had their whole livelihoods changed. And I very much look forward to this conversation today.
And thank you for joining us. Sagun Idowu, welcome. Thank you for being here. I have to mention, I'm just so proud that you were just mentioned in the Boston Globe today, a great article. Please tell us about you and your organization.
Yes, thank you very much. And I appreciate your and Vice Chairwoman Bowman having me on this afternoon, beautiful afternoon, to talk about the state of our businesses here in the Commonwealth. So my name is Shagun. I'm the Executive Director of the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, or BECMA. I'm born and raised in Boston, Massachusetts, where I still currently reside in the neighborhood of Hyde Park. Done a lot in the city in regards to policy or legislation. Started off working for City Councilor Charles Yancey once I graduated from Morehouse College and came back to Boston in 2012. And I've been on that course ever since now. Winding up with BECMA, which essentially serves as the Chamber of Commerce for Black businesses in the Commonwealth with over 300 members. We do 3 things for our members. We advocate for policy that's going to impact the growth of our businesses. We convene important conversations like these, like this that's happening today, which we're happy to be a part of, that focus on solutions. And finally, we connect our members to one another and to important opportunities like contracts in the private and public sector.
Thank you, and thank you all. So let's get started. One of the questions I was thinking about that we should kind of start on is, it's really clear that COVID-19 is having a devastating effect on our business community. I've talked to a number of our small business owners and our business owning organizations, and they complain daily about how slow it's getting back, the impact that it's having. But I maintain, and I'm sure you will agree, that it's also having an even greater effect on the Black business community. So I put this out to any of you to just jump in. Why is that? Could you talk a little bit? Why are we being so hard hit with this, the COVID-19, the effects of COVID-19?
Well, I can go off, and then I feel like whatever I say is going to be representative or proven with the experiences of the business owners on this call. I mean, we're just a group that tries to put together all of the experiences of Black business owners in the Commonwealth. But what I've heard, and would love to hear more from the business owners on this particular question, first of all, we have to understand that Black businesses were already in a precarious position before all of this started. It's not like we were thriving and surviving before COVID-19 hit our communities. We were already facing issues with access to capital. We were already facing issues with folks actually patronizing our businesses, with us generating commerce. We were already facing difficulties with obtaining loans. So all of these things kind of hit the head once COVID-19 hit, where now everyone is experiencing the Black business owners experience. And so because we are always, that there's an often used phrase, at least many years ago, that we're often the last hired and the first fired, even in this experience, when it comes to resources available to small business owners, we again find ourselves the last to receive this help, and then the first, or the first not to be able to use it, as we saw with the Paycheck Protection Program.
Thanks. Dennis, I thought you were getting ready to say something as well. Do you want to join in on this conversation?
Yeah, so I just want to echo what Segun said, and just kind of try to paint this picture of what the landscape was like pre-COVID, particularly here in the city of Cambridge, where there's only a handful of Black-owned businesses that hold liquor licenses in the city of Cambridge. The number of Black and Latino-owned businesses in the city prior to COVID was very limited. And as what has been pointed out, many of these businesses already struggle for access to capital, struggle to maintain the employees, and the financial struggle is very, very difficult. And so, and also the burdens that are associated with, the regulation of many of our businesses. That sometimes those regulations tend to put us in a much tougher position than many other businesses that can weather hardcore regulations. So now comes COVID, and we're dealing with a situation where we're struggling day to day, obviously to maintain our staffing levels. Pre-COVID, my restaurant employed over 60 people, and many of those people are now unemployed. We're trying to come back, thanks to the support of the Central Square Business Association and the hard work of, Michael Modesty and others, that, they can't do it alone. And what I'm seeing is that as a city, we have to be a lot more proactive around the help and support that we need. You take, for example, a lot of the activity that we're seeing in our squares to set up an extension of, patios out into the street. Many of these patios to date have still not been set up.
Yeah.
Yet we've known for 4 months that something was going to happen at some point in time, and we should have been better prepared, because every single day that our businesses are not able to generate enough income is a day that we come closer to closing our doors forever. And so, our numbers are already limited, and now this really just exacerbates our situation.
Thanks, Dennis. Let me come to you, Erin. I talked to you a couple of times during, at the height of the pandemic, and I know you came up with some very innovative ways to stay open. I actually did a drive-by, Erin. I said, Erin, I got to do something. And she says, wait right here. And she literally comes up to my car with a bag full of hair products, gloves, conditioner, and a bottle of wine. I went to the wine first, I want to tell you. And I just thought that, wow, that's really innovative, because I could not imagine, how you were being able to maintain when you had no contact was part of it. So when you think of some of the limitations and some of the difficulties, what comes to mind for you, particularly as someone in a industry that, from my bird's eye view of it, is a major presence, particularly in the Black and Brown community?
Okay. Thank you, Denise. Yes. Well, for us, or maybe just for me, because everybody was at home and able to collect unemployment where I wasn't able to, so I didn't set that up right. But I had to get creative in a sense to figure out where was the need that my clients would still have. And the conversations we have with clients when they first come was how to care for your hair at home. So they needed that because they entrusted us to do. Now there was a need. And how was I going to get those products, and the direction? So I talked to people, even from other states, people who weren't our particular in-salon clients, and did consultations with them. And I had to still order products with money, because we didn't have money coming in because we weren't doing clients. I had money saved for like taxes and other things that I had to dip into, and still pay the bills. I had bills. I had to stop bills. Landlord was gracious to me in both areas where I live and where I have my business. And I had to invest that money into products and start trying to find the PPE. So we'll have it when we're ready to open. And I just kept ordering, and then the people were nice enough that they were able to like sell me products. And even if I didn't have the money, they would still send them to me in good faith that I would give them the money. But I mean, that really, it helped because it kept me mentally grounded. Because if I had nothing to do, I don't think I would be okay, because I'm so used to being connected to people face to face. But it really gave those clients the confidence in taking care of their hair, because that was important to them, because they still had to show up on Zoom and be cute. It just made less work when they came in, and it really like helped us as a business. Like, people support us by gift cards, which, it's funny, gift cards really was money we can't spend. When you get a gift card, you have to put that away, because if you spend it, when that client comes in, you're supposed to process that money through the business. And if there's nothing left, then you have no money. So we had to put, I didn't tell anyone no, because you don't turn down money, right? I just put it away, you know, and now when the client comes in, I can flow it through the business. But people were very gracious. And it's funny, I didn't skip a beat. I didn't get a vacation at all. I was in that salon 3, 5, 6 days, you know, working and getting together, and just started recreate what the salon should look like, waiting on the governor for information.
Thanks very much. That's very helpful. Mike, yeah, Dennis said something that was very important. I've heard it before, you know, what took us so long? Why were we not more effective? Can you speak to, you know, from your, again, vantage point as being the executive director of the BID, the impact you've seen on Black and Brown businesses, and why?
Sure. The impact we saw early on, we surveyed members of the Central Square BID on March 15th, which was super early in COVID. I think it just started to unfold in front of us. And we knew then that the results were bad, and that this fragile ecosystem that we work within, although we have a strong community, we have a weak infrastructure, weak ecosystem. And instantly, it was that access to resource that many small businesses needed help with. They needed attorneys, they needed accountants, they needed some of those conversations to better navigate PPP loans. And we tried to advocate and provide all of that information to the business community, oftentimes recommending that they prioritize grants over loans, because the real effects of COVID, I don't know that we've necessarily bottomed out just yet. I was on a call with the Department of Revenue, and the Commonwealth in May was talking about a 5-year plan to rebound from COVID in May of this year. And for a small business, you can't recapture any of those days. So early on, we knew there was a need for business resource. Dennis had mentioned outdoor dining and patios. You generally need an architect to draw that footprint as you submit it to the city of Cambridge. That's a cost associated with that. So finding a way, and thankfully through the Boston Society of Architects, there were a few BSA folks who were able to provide resource for Cambridge businesses. But even taking a step back, what businesses need now to be able to survive COVID is access to capital, right? First and foremost. City's done a good job of trying to save lives and livelihoods. There's been some money allocated towards residents, small businesses. I think there needs to be a package specifically for Black and Brown owned businesses. And I look forward to further in this conversation talking more about the systems that were already hard prior to COVID for Black and Brown businesses to thrive in Cambridge, Greater Boston. And a lot of that relates to zoning, the cost of doing business, the unbelievable challenges in permitting and such. So I'll save some more comment for that and add more there.
You know what it raises for me, something is access to information, and then access to the programs themselves. Now, Cambridge the mayor had a program. The Cambridge Redevelopment Department had a program in Cambridge, and then there was a program for business owners in Cambridge. This is on top of the CARE Act, the PPP. And what I found, and what I want to kind of hear from you is, two things happened. Either they didn't know, or something that you said, Dennis, couldn't get access. There were 2 hair salons that came to us to ask for help. and they just got mired down in the process of getting access to capital. Something that Shagun said on the pre-call about trying to help people get those PPP applications in, and some making it and some not making. So I want to come back to you, Shagun, first. What can we do to make it easy to get our community more connected? Because as a city councilor, as a school committee person, you can only field so many questions to the right places. And how is it that we connect? If information is power and we're not always getting the information, so we don't always have the power, how do we make that better? And what did you see as some of the impediments for those that didn't make it, say, through the PPP application process?
Well, yeah, well, but it's a great question. It's a big question, but it's important, and there's a reason why it's so big. So I mean, a shameless plug will be for BECMA that one way to reach business owners is by talking to us, and we'll let our folks know. But there are many other, Mr. Monestein's organization, letting them know, because I know that they have Black and brown business owners in their networks, but also to Erin and to Dennis, and letting them know, because the thing about Black and brown business owners is that they have other friends that are Black and brown business owners, either in the same vicinity or in other cities and towns. And so when it comes to Cambridge itself offering different programs, it's about letting not only organizations like ours know, but also the business owners themselves who can share that information, as well as residents. I mean, what I saw happen, what I saw happen in particular cities in Massachusetts is that they let businesses know, but not residents. And so it's important to let residents know too, because they have relationships with business owners. My barber, who I was able to support last week, because I was looking rough after 3 months inside the house, I was able to let him know about programs that the city was offering that he had not heard about, because he's not on the city's mailing list. He doesn't follow them on social media, so we have to rely on people to get information out, not just our regular, the regular ways that we put out the information. It being available is not the only way that folks find out what they know. But in terms of barriers, so first it's that the lack of access to the information, yes. But then when you do have that information, a lot of folks don't understand the information that's been put out. When the CARES Act was passed, it took a while for us to get easy to understand guides for what was put out. It was all that legalese and it was pages long. So no one, whether it be a sole proprietor business owner or someone who manages 100 employees, had the time to sit down and read through all that and figure out what's there for me. And so that's why, at least for BECMA, we joined the Mass Equitable PPP Access Initiative, which its entire focus was on getting Black and brown businesses access to the Paycheck Protection Program. And now we've shifted to making sure that folks understand the forgiveness requirements, so that it doesn't stay a loan, but that it turns into a grant. But again, it is going to come from engaging in organizations like BECMA and others, engaging other business owners to get information out there, so that folks understand the information that they're getting, but also so that we can provide the help that's necessary. A sole proprietor business owner, I was just talking to a business owner on Friday, who became frustrated with the contracting process in Boston and just gave up. They're no longer ever going to try again. So that's why Boston will continue to have 5% of its contracting going to minority businesses. But she also had issues with federal programs and gave up because until she talked to us, had not talked to any organization or person who had experience with it. And so did not know what documents to have together. And so we had to take advantage. So a lot of it is about making these connections to folks who do have the technical capabilities and know-how, in order to do as much work as possible on the part of the business owner, because folks don't have time. They're too busy trying to keep their business alive to sit down and read through pages of documents to get their stuff together.
And that's a real important point, that people don't have the time. I think of right up the street from me, there's a restaurant called Izzy's, and every time, Izzy's a great guy, he does a great business. I don't think he ever gets out of his store. Or another small business owner that has a little shop. She sells African clothing at Porter Square. I don't think she ever gets out of her shop, because she's a 1 or 2 person operation. But more on that, Manikka, please, don't be shy to chime in if you have thoughts on this. Any other thoughts on how we can be more effective in our outreach?
Yeah. I'll yield to Manikka first. She wants to say something.
No, I think, I think about it through the lens of the work that I do with the Urban Land Institute and the engagement that I have with a lot of minority contractors as well as developers. And, the ability to be able to access information in a way that will position them to be able to move forward with application is really hard. And a lot of times, this is the thing that frustrates me. Some people, this is where racism comes into play, and not understanding systematic racism. The reason why it's tougher for those businesses is because of the historical infrastructures and systems that's been in place. And so as soon as you position yourself to be able to access information, kind of the game gets changed on you. And so I think it's just important to say that, because a lot of times we go into this space of blaming individuals for the inability to be able to access things instead of looking at the systematic issues that are in play that block people from being able to be successful.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mike, you want to talk on this a little bit, and then we can come to you, Aaron?
Yeah, if I could just jump off of what Manikka said, it's really based on this notion that in competitive markets, the best folks will make it to the top. Well, the reality is a lot of folks enter that race disadvantaged and not at the same starting line. And I think that while Cambridge is supported with good intentions, I really think that the next step here locally needs to be really set on policy and how policy can better inform how many businesses. The question was, how are our businesses doing through COVID? The reality is we don't have a lot of Black and brown businesses in Cambridge because the cost of doing business here is so large. And, retail on the Mass Ave corridor is some of the highest square footage in the Commonwealth. And just we need more flex space. We need coalitions of folks who bring information to the business community. We can't think that folks are just going to log into Zooms or find the time when they're really working to save their livelihoods.
Exactly. No. Aaron, did you want to add anything to that question?
Yeah, I want to add something that thinking about, like the people that I was connected with that were businesses in Cambridge and in cities like Boston, because the air industry is so large, one of the largest in Massachusetts.
So Aaron, I don't know about everyone else. Does everyone have problems hearing Aaron?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, you're not clear at all. And I don't.
Yes. Is this better?
Let's try it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Nope, it's not. Not better at all. So we're going to come back to you, Aaron. Let's see if some of our technical people can come back.
So, Madam Mayor, I'll just add a little bit to that. Well, I guess Aaron clears up that problem. So, one of the reasons why, I would say I was able to access, some of the help, and I would say I was probably maybe successful at getting help from 1 or 2 of 10 different applications that I filed. And it has a lot to do with, some advice that I received about 25 years ago from one of my mentors that said to me that the number one thing that you want to do is make sure that you always have a good accountant. And one of the things that has prohibited many of us, both in the Latino, African-American community, from accessing any help and any support has been the fact that we have not been able to maintain the records necessary to qualify for many of these programs, right? Yeah. And a lot of this doesn't have to do with, it's not necessary that it's our fault. It has to do with practice, right? And it has to do with, it being a routine. Now, accounting work, as you know, is not cheap. It's expensive. You know, I've had the same accountants now for about 15 years. They're certified public accountants. It's a Latino-owned business, and I think one of the areas and one of the ways that we can come up with a solution to some of these problems is creating a directory of accountants, particularly in the Black and Brown community, that can help assist either young entrepreneurs or businesses that are currently in existence. Because whether you're talking about the local bodega, whether you're talking about the barbershop, whether you're talking about restaurants, salons, spas, there's a little echo here. I'm not sure what happened, but yeah. No, I'm not hearing you, Madam Mayor.
I am inadvertently unmuted
there you
myself.
go. Yeah. So I was just saying that whether you're talking about any of these businesses, if you go to many of them, I'm almost certain that they will tell you that they don't work with an accountant, and so that's one way of kind of really working to resolve some of these issues. And I just want to just point out that as it relates to Cambridge, we are really going to have to be intentional about supporting the creation of new Black and Brown businesses in our city. And as you know, when zoning issues come up with a lot of these new developments across the city, and you and I sat next to each other on the council, Madam Mayor, and we talked a lot about the importance of affordable micro retail spaces, right? And that was one way of really dealing with the lack of access to real estate in a city where it's cost prohibitive, as Mike pointed out. So you're not going to have a lot of Black and Brown businesses because people just cannot afford to rent. And certainly, even if they could afford to rent, do they have the paper trail necessary to go in and negotiate a lease with a landlord that's going to be looking for a pro forma, with a landlord that's going to be looking for capital sitting in a bank account? And these are all the impediments that we encountered in establishing the cannabis business, right? Where you're competing against, multi-million-dollar businesses that can easily say, hey, those guys can't afford to pay $30,000 a month rent. We certainly can. And so, it gets very, very complicated. And I think that, one way to deal with that is, again, really trying to link us with accountants, which, again, is not a cheap service.
Yeah, I want to jump in there because I feel like in this conversation, I represent many hats, but in the context of my work here in Cambridge, as a school committee member, I feel like I'm the beginning of the pipeline, in essence, when we're talking about engaging young people and tapping into their imaginations at a very early age to see themselves as business owners. And I think in Cambridge, one of the things that drives me absolutely nutty, we will have tons of conversations about dismantling racism, and we can all say white supremacy, we're all progressive. However, when that translates into the conversation that we're having now, I feel like we're not having the conversations with our young people to see themselves outside of the racial constructs that have weighed us down. And they've been around for a while, but our people have still figured out a way to survive, and not only survive, thrive. And I think that Aaron, who's my stylist, I need a haircut, and Dennis is a prime example of that in the city. So I just want to hear everyone on the call actually talk about how did you assess risk, and at what point on your journey did you say, okay, I'm willing to take this risk to start a business, and how did that shape you as a business owner in the city? Because I think that young people need to hear that story as well.
Who wants to jump in?
Okay, we'll try with Aaron.
Well, I'll start.
Okay. Now I can hear you now.
All right, it's a little when you speak. So, you how did I get the business? What that looked like? Manikka, pretty much.
Hold on, Aaron. Is she still breaking up for you folks?
She's still breaking up. So we're gonna, yeah. So let's go to
Okay.
Dennis, and then
We're
we'll
going to go
try
to Dennis,
Aaron.
Aaron, and we'll come back to you. Let me see if I can talk to the technical people behind the scene. Go, Dennis. Go on.
Yeah. Thank you. So I think my development as an entrepreneur began back in the early 80s. I'm sorry, the late 80s, when you know, the issue of drugs was very prevalent in Columbia Terrace and Columbia Street neighborhood, where, you know, a lot of my friends would engage in drug activity, and my parents, who were first generation immigrants, instilled in me this like idea that you gotta work, you gotta have a job, right? And what I did at a young age is I entered the construction business, and you know, I began on working on people's houses. And one of my first jobs was actually for Pee Wee of New Image, working on his house in Boston, and that's what kind of kept me, you know, I would say on a straight path as I went through college and on to law school. And so, you know, what I would say to the young people is that, you know, you've got to be willing to take risks, but you also have to be willing to stick with, you know, your dream. And, you know, sometimes getting there is not necessarily going to take you on the path that you want to take, but it's one step in the right direction. So being in the construction business taught me about business so that I can later, you know, operate my own law firm, and I could later get into the restaurant business and the cannabis business. And so every little bit of experience leads to something, you know, greater. And what I find is that in any sector that I work in, that, you know, our numbers are limited, right? And this is the structural disadvantage that we're in when we get into business. So whether it's in the legal field, where there's a very limited number of African-American Latino lawyers, whether it's in the cannabis, where there are only a handful of operators in the state of Massachusetts that do adult use, whether it's the restaurant business, whether it's politics. I mean, as you know, I was the first Latino elected to the Cambridge City Council in 2013. So, you know, we're constantly breaking barriers, but we carry a heavy burden, right? And sometimes that burden gets difficult, and it wants to break your back. But, you know, we've got to be willing to take these risks, and we got to also be willing to work with each other and support each other along the way.
Let's try to go back to Aaron. Aaron, try taking out your headset, maybe. Let's see. Let's see if we can hear you without it. Okay, now try.
Is it staticky?
That's better.
Better?
It's a little better.
I'll read your lips. Well, to piggyback off, right? So I would say, like Dennis was saying, when we were young, we did things. We volunteered, you know, we showed up, accountability, because we knew we represented and our parents, right? I think parents are different today. The ones I see and the ones I communicate with, where you represented the family, you showed up. Even though you didn't show up, you did it because you knew you'd be in trouble if you didn't show up, volunteer, like at the barbershop and whatnot. So we have a sense of accountability, where I don't think children today, the ones I interact with, have that sense of accountability. The other thing is a lot of options, so they don't want to stay with anything because they have the internet going on, where you could be famous, and that's not necessarily true with everyone. You know, you never really stick to anything. The kids that I have hired a young lady from Park High since September. She has a nail license. She graduated. She's going for a cosmetology. She's hired full time, and that's because she's dedicated. But I think children are different. I spoke to the kids at the Gold program, which I'd love to do. Cambridge community, just anywhere that I am asked, I up, you know, and I speak to the kids. A kid that's from Wilson Court, projects in Cambridge, single family. My mom raised us 3, you know what I mean? She kept us, we went to Blessed Sacrament, NCC. We were held accountable, you know? Part of it is holding our kids accountable. It's not about the kids, like it's the parents. The other thing I also wanted to piggyback on about the businesses in Cambridge, the Black and Latinos. We need to advocate to keep in touch with all the businesses, because I feel like Denise said, or Manikka, I'm not sure, like I was supposed to be on the Zoom call the other day, had an hour free to jump on, but then someone was behind, so I had to jump in, so I wasn't able to. Like, our time is not the same, because when you're in business, it's really not clocked hours. I think was that too, Denise, right? The other thing is that sometimes Black people, I know we don't want to tell white people, right? You don't want them in your finances, because if you see something, it'll be something else. That's what I always growing up, right? So you kind of want to manage money. So being able to trust somebody else into our finances to help.
Right.
Like, I have a bookkeeper every week, because numbers aren't my thing, but I can make the money. But managing it was never my thing. I winged it for like 12 years, and finally sat down, and she speaks to my level, understand. And that's another thing. You have to be able to speak with a business owner understands, because most business owners that I know of, they're great with hands, but the
Right.
whole business and all that, getting things together, keeping order, keeping 7 years of information and doing your taxes, that's another thing to think of. And then my fellow stylists and they're 1099s. A lot of them are not registered with as a business. So if you're not recognized as now, you want to go buy a home, you want money from the or whatever, and where have you been working? You know, you don't have a paper trail. So a lot of it is fear. We think that if all our money, we're going to be okay, but then there's no paper trail. That we have to be legit. We have to be on paper. And then I think, like, if we have little small business networking each other business and invite everybody else to your, so people can see it, you know, so you don't have to necessarily leave this month it's at yours, next month it's at mine. Like, draw people out and not feel like we're in competition, because just because you're one restaurant doesn't mean you're really in competition with the other, because it's a different type of food anyway. You know what I mean? So if we're not in competition, there's enough money for everybody.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I know that she froze just now, but I wanted to jump in. I hope Erin is able to come back. But I think it's interesting because I've been able to work with some of the most wealthy people in the Commonwealth that's building our cities, right? And it's something that Erin just said, you know, knowing your strengths and then hiring people around you. And I think that a lot of times when people look at entrepreneurs or CEOs or any individual that is successful, there's this built-in assumption that they just had it all figured out. And I think that particularly young people or people that have a passion needs to give themselves permission to understand that they're not going to know it all. And so I'm really curious to hear how other people, when they assess, you know, have an assessment of like the risk that they're willing to take when it comes to starting their own business. I know Segan ran for public office. Like, you know, how do you assess your risk in a way that positions you to still continue to try and be successful regardless of the outcome?
Shigun, did you want to speak a little bit to that from, I know it's a broader perspective, but I'm sure you have a perspective on this, and then I'd like to hear from Mike. Shigun?
And I was, you know, I was nodding my head the whole time, particularly on this notion that that when people see someone being successful, they, you know, the assumption that they think they did it themselves. And so you brought up the piece in the Globe this morning. I mean, everyone's going to look at that and say, oh, look at this guy who's done whatever. But one of the things I was really happy about, and when the Globe approached me about doing this piece, I stressed to them, this cannot be a piece where you just quote me throughout the whole thing and bada bing, bada boom, now it's in the Globe. It's like, no, they quoted multiple people. I mean, I didn't tell them to choose the people they did, and I'm a little upset that no one told me that they talked to them. But you know, they what was important to me in anything that talks about me, and I think a lot of my friends feel the same way for themselves, that none of us gets to where we are by ourselves. Any victory associated or attributed to a singular person, I never want that for it to ever be assumed that that was something done by myself, because none of us achieves anything by ourselves. So for me, it was parents, teachers, friends, everyone in my circle that got me to where I am. And so when I think about risk, I mean, you talk about the run for office, I think about even joining BECMA, which was risky because it was a startup organization. It didn't have much of a reputation beyond the folks who started it and the people who were there in the beginning. No one had heard of BECMA. And so it's a risky proposition, especially for young people who want to take over someone else's glory, because they think that that will be the way to catapult them to success, or at least how they define success. But I remember I was a chapel assistant in school, and one thing the dean had said to me was, be careful when you take over someone's success, because you don't know what they did to get there, and it's going to be hard finding out on your way down. And so, you know, when I think of everything that's needed for folks to get where they are, or identifying risk and all that kind of stuff, at the end of the day, it becomes a less risky venture when you have surrounded yourself with people who, you know, as you mentioned in your question, who fill in the gaps, because none of us is perfect. None of us has all the answers. But if we are selecting folks either as employees or as folks in our friend circles, or even folks who are associates or mentors who fill in those gaps, who we can go to with questions, who can tell us when we're wrong and will receive it and grow from it. All of that is important when thinking about whether it's starting your own business, running for office, managing an organization, all the things that require us to be executives. So that's a great question, and yeah, it takes a lot more to get where we are than just ourselves.
Right, you're quite right. I think people looking from the outside think it's magic, and it's not, or it's easy, and it's not. And there's something glamorous, I think, about being able to say you own your own business. You own your own business, but what you don't hear is, and your business owns you, and people don't understand that. You know, so when people are sitting home and say, "Oh, I had the day off," no, I'm in the office trying to catch up. Oh, why don't you go on vacation? No, I'm in the office trying to catch up. Why? I was trying to get you at home. Where were you? I was in the office trying to catch up. And that's I think is the disconnect. And when you talk about a risk, Manikka, sometimes people don't even anticipate the risk, the amount of where they have to put themselves, what they have to do to put themselves out to do it. That's why they get in, sometimes successfully, sometimes not so much. And the other thing that I think Erin said that was very important to know is that you have to shore up your weaknesses. If you want to be in a hair salon or a restaurant or an insurance agency, and accounting isn't, you know, you should not be your own accountant unless that's something you study, clearly. Or you shouldn't be your own attorney if that's not anything that you study. But I want to hear from you, Mike. What are some of your thoughts around this topic?
Sure, thank you. You know, to be in business takes a great deal of risk, and also a great deal of faith in yourself and what you're capable of. To sort of mitigate some of that risk, if you can build those transferable skills, Dennis talked about it as a young man who was doing a trade and was learning the business behind that trade, he can then apply that to his business today. I think it goes back to resource and opportunity, to Manikka's prompt to this question about young people. And not only can we change this narrative through policy, we can change this narrative through creating more opportunity for our young people. If we can get young people more involved in internships, if Cambridge did a better job with workforce development, where we were getting young people exposed to different types of work. I was fortunate enough through my own entrepreneurial spirit. One, my father is a immigrant from Haiti who has a work ethic like nobody's business. Same for my Irish mom, both living across the street from each other in JP. Just that being instilled in me helped me sort of cut that curve. But for me, I had many mentors growing up, whether they knew that or not, people I looked up to, people I was studying, people I was listening to everything they said and did less talking and more listening. You start to learn these transferable skills. I was a big mouth as a young person. I was a promoter, but that's given me a transferable skill that I can present in front of an audience and sort of capture an audience to absorb what I'm talking about. So I think if we were to give more opportunity to young people where they can create those transferable skills, I think it makes business feel less risky when you sort of have some feathers in the cap, and it allows you to sort of take that leap of faith.
Madam Mayor, if I could just add just a couple of quick points.
Sure, please.
Yeah, So, as I read Segun's, the article that came out in the Globe and in our pre-conference call that we had a couple of days ago, there were a couple of things that came up. And one was this idea around self-determination and the idea that in order for our communities to advance both in business and in other areas, that we've got to be committed to the idea of economic justice, right? And I think as one of the things that a lot of our young people are really not picking up is the importance of associating social justice with economic justice. And in order to have economic justice, you've got to have a strong work ethic, right? I mean, one of the things, as Mike pointed out, that really carried me from the time that I was young was this work ethic, because I had immigrant parents that came to this country to work hard to achieve success and put their kids through school. And that's something that only our community can talk about, right? That's a conversation that we have to have within our community about the importance of, having perseverance, taking responsibility and wanting to work hard, but also trusting each other as a community, trusting that we can spend our dollars in each other's business, trusting that we can support each other, that we can do business with each other. And these are all things that are going to be incredibly difficult for us to work with. And, now as you see a lot of these movements across the country to defund the police, right? And many of these movements are being led by obviously people of color, but also there are a lot of whites that are involved in these movements. And as I listen to them, I think about, what commitment they have within their own workplace to make sure that their workforces are diverse, to make sure that the banks that they work with, the banks that they own, are lending money to our community. So it's easy for anybody to stand up and say, let's defund the police, the police are racist, especially when it's coming from, the white community. It's much harder for those people to look at themselves in the mirror and really analyze their true commitment around the economy to helping Black and brown people. And I think that we've got to hold their feet to the fire much more than what we've done in the past when it comes to that. And that's why, I really respect a lot of the work that Beckman's doing and a lot of others are doing to really, bring to the front and center the idea of economic justice, because that's how we're going to have true sustainable progress in our communities.
Thanks, Dennis. One of the things that I've heard a couple of times, the word used is policy. Manikka and I are policymakers. Dennis, you've been a policymaker. Each of you on this panel have influenced policy. And so 2 questions would like you to address before we leave this conversation is, one, what kind of policy practices and procedures should we have in place or should have had in place so that we will not get to this place again? That's number one. And then the second question is, how do we encourage our own community in particular, but the community in general, to patronize Black and brown owned businesses? And I throw that, just put your hand up whoever wants to jump in on that one.
I jump in because it's interesting. I've mentioned multiple times that I come to this conversation from multiple different hats, but I think really building off of what Dennis said, it's been really interesting living through this time with the death of George Floyd and seeing how the world has responded, which has been really remarkable and inspiring. And I also think that because you have like this newfound energy, that there's sometimes a disconnect, building off of what Dennis is saying. And it is easier to point at, public institutions to say you're not doing X, Y, or Z, to then to look at the places where you function every day to make the change. And I really think that there's a way in which our communities can come together and really dig into that policy piece. Because it's one thing to show up to say defund the police. It's another thing to take a step back and really look through different departments, look through different policies, whether it's zoning or looking at, how we make partnerships in the Cambridge Public Schools, to really take a step back from that and write policies that right in wrongs from a long-term historical perspective. And I just thought it was really important to say that.
I thank you for saying that, Manikka, because, as a policymaker, as you are, we know that it's getting the policy written and then get the policy practiced. And it's so hard to often do that. But Sugar, I'm going to go to you and I'm going to work my way through all of you to just kind of speak to those things about what policy, procedures, and practices should we have there? And if time permitting, we have an opportunity to talk a little bit about how do we get more people to patronize our businesses. Sugar?
Yeah, I won't say too much, and I appreciate it. If these are the last questions, I just want to say again that I appreciate the invitation to share with all of you, but really to listen to what's been shared today. In terms of policies that can be implemented, I mean, where to begin? I think though, if you put the framework that Vice Chairwoman Bowman just put out, then it doesn't matter what policy you put forth, but it has to have that equity lens. And all of this needs to be discussed at the outset of talking about the policy, and not something that's done at the end of the conversation, which we've seen happen too often on the state and the local level, and don't get started on the federal level. But at least tangible things. I mean, BECMA and some other organizations came together to form what's called the Black Mass Coalition a couple of weeks ago, and we put out a blueprint for 5 different sectors in the Commonwealth of what they can do to address a long history of injuries against not just the Black population, but the Indigenous population as well. And one of those sectors is local government. And so that contains 10 different policy items that cities need to do in order to address systemic racism. The beginning of it, I should say that doing those 10 things don't mean that racism is over. But it's like these are the tangible things that we can do now to address not just the systemic police violence, but also the economic violence that continues to be inflicted on our community. In terms of getting people out to patronize our businesses, the question I've been asked, whether it be talking to news folks or talking behind closed doors to folks in the private sector, is this newfound investment in Black businesses something that will be sustained or something that's short-lived? And so long as this is only a response to what we saw happen in Minneapolis or in Atlanta or in LA or wherever, it will be short-lived. I mean, Black people are very used to white people waking up and then falling back to sleep again very quickly. It's this racist narcolepsy that seems to inflict our nation. But if people have the understanding that the development of some communities cannot coexist with the underdevelopment of others, we'll see a prolonged and sustained investment in Black businesses. Black businesses, at least in the state of Massachusetts, there's 1,200 Black-owned firms. That means more than 2 employees that employ 14,000 people and contribute billions of dollars to the economy. That's what gets our streets paved. It's what keeps our lights on. It's what keeps water in the hydrants and hoses down a lot of our kids in the summertime, or keeps a business or a house from burning down. That is our contribution to this state. Now, if we allow these businesses to fail, then so too does the Massachusetts economy, the thing that we boast about when looking at other states. And so the only way we can say that we have a healthy economy is because of the state of our businesses now. But imagine if we invested even more in our businesses, the low billions that we produce throw into even more billions, which reduces the responsibility of the citizen to contribute so much to what we see going on because of how much our businesses are investing in our economy. So, our businesses are important, and the future of the Commonwealth is dependent on the future of Black businesses. If we have that understanding, then we'll see that folks begin to invest more intentionally for a sustained period of time.
Thanks so much. Mike, Dennis, and then Aaron.
Thank you. So just two quick things. I'm reading a book right now, The Color of Law. And when you think of just how far back all of this goes in terms of systemic systems that have brought us to where we are today, I think that zoning is really important. And with the affordable housing overlay conversation in front of the council currently on housing affordability, we also need to think about how ground floor retail, ground floor businesses might be incentivized through zoning as a mechanism to make it easier for certain businesses to open. And around the question of how do we market Black and brown businesses today, to Sagun's point that it doesn't fade away in the coming months, how do we keep that pressure on? How do we lift that up? I think that takes vision. I think cities don't do marketing really well. They're not marketers. But I think through economic development, community development, we need to think, how do we market these businesses better? That could be through boards of tourism, local boards of tourism, Maybe that's establishing our own Black Restaurant Week. Maybe that's furthering a small business Friday, Saturday initiative that's shop local to Black and Brown communities. And instead of doing it once a year or for 1 month, like we unfortunately do other celebrations, how can we be more mindful of that and do that multiple times throughout the year? But again, working to find ways to be creative in marketing and how we lift up those voices.
Thanks, Mike. Dennis?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. So I just had a conversation ago with them, going business in Boston, that where it came up that there's a lot of fear right now about whether or not we're going to be able to weather this storm over the next six months to a year, right? And there's a lot of uncertainty. And so, one of the ways that we can really assist businesses, and Mike brought this up just now, is helping us to market our businesses, and making sure that it's something that can happen immediately, because when we leave things to cities, it takes a long time for things to realize. One of the things when I was in Mayor, as you know, is I try to get an accurate sense of how many Black and Brown businesses we have in the city of Cambridge. How many liquor licenses are actually held by Black and Brown folks? How many restaurants are owned by Black and Brown folks? And before this call, I went on the CDD site trying to find this information, and I really couldn't find it. It wasn't anything that really popped out. And so in order for us to move forward in our own community, is we have to go street by street, block by block, understand what are the needs of our community, and figure out what are the resources that are going to be necessary to create more new businesses, but also continue to support those businesses that right now in this COVID era may not be around for the next 6 months or a year. This pandemic may end up wiping out the little that we have of a Black and Latino owned Black and Latino middle class. So the work that Beckman's doing to raise capital for businesses of color, I would say is 1 and 2 in terms of the support that we're going to need. But really marketing and capital, and also figuring out a way to support the efforts of individuals that are running organizations like the Untitled Square Business Association, giving them a little bit more flexibility to use their own discretion to move things forward much quicker, so that we can see much more support sooner than later. Because if this thing continues for the next 1, 2, 3 months, it's really going to have a detrimental effect to us.
Thanks, Dennis. Technology has not been our friend today. So we're going to try to come to you, Aaron, and have you say some final remarks. Then I'm going to turn it over to my co-moderator to talk a little bit about next week's program. I'd like to thank all of you, and then we'll probably sign off. So I'm going to turn it to you, Aaron. Let's see if technology is our friend. If not, I apologize to you and to our viewers that we didn't have such a good time with it. But I hope that they'll stay with us as we continue to have these programs, and we'll make technology work better for us maybe in the future. So, Aaron, let's see how we'll do this time. Any final remarks?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I'm staying really still. Thank you for having me, and I'm really appreciative of being part of this with everyone else. I just want to say ditto to everyone. Everyone, you left me really nothing to say. So I do want to say that Dennis say something about things are happening now. We're getting support now, but my fear is that we opened, but it's later. It's actually the end of summer, fall, winter. Are we going to be able to maintain things then? Am I going to be able to pay the team, buy products and service the clients then? Now, going, business is on an all high. It's kind of digital. I feel like we're going to get through July, maybe, August. What are we going to do in the fall, winter? So that's the other thing is, and which has been very gracious. I haven't heard of not one of the, not even Boston, having the resources that Cambridge has. And then when anyone talked about resources, it was at the tail end when we were about to open as salons and barbershops. The other thing Mike is great. He said something about Restaurant Week for Black Black restaurants. Like, that's amazing. Like, that's something that should happen. It should, we do have to like put ourselves out, be consistent. And I feel like if any are in place, it's consistency, because everything else is going to go by the wayside. Like, talking to other barbers and stylists, like, everybody was like so afraid, but now all those that were supposedly important to us have gone by the wayside. I'm like, well, what happened? Even though we're back, this can happen again. So it's keeping up that flow and keeping everything involved and interested, everybody to their corners, because they feel safe. This could happen again, So for me, it's consistency of all of this and the resources that we staying connected and not staying in your shell as a business, but getting out there and getting to know people and have your advisory team, like Dennis said. You gotta have your team. Like Manikka said, it's not just me that makes difference. There's a whole lot of folks. Sometimes it's Denise, sometimes it's Manikka. There's a lot of folks that are helping this business thrive. It is just me. And the worries that as business owners, when the team goes home, Erin is still worried. Denise is still worried or concerned or trying to make it flow. Like you said, time off, no, catching up, still catching, so long way to go. But as long as we have that support and stay connected. Yeah. And one more thing I want to share. I know we got to go. For instance, like the Capitol, I remember I've been with this bank over years. I have many ideas with them I went in for, I thought I had the credit score. And they said no. And I was like, and it's funny. And the gentleman said, did you found that you were Black? I said, yeah. He said, I don't think you should do that. And I'm like, wow, check you. I didn't get it. Then I'm going to say it, Cambridge Savings Bank. I didn't say where I am, Cambridge Savings Bank. I went over there in Inman Square, little Black and brown people sign up for the thing. Boom, they gave me the money within days. And I just developed a relationship. I didn't even have a relationship with them at all. And I signed up, made a with $25. Boom, they gave me the money that I've been hanging with for years wouldn't give me. And I'm like, so, I mean, I don't know. I'm glad I've got a relationship with Savings Bank, and they're very good businesses, so I share the information. But it's hard to trust people, because you don't get the same love and support as you do.
Thanks, Erin. This has been a great conversation. Like most conversations, no sooner as we get ramped up and revved up, it's time for us to close it out for the day. So I am so very grateful to have each of you here. Certainly grateful for Susan Fleischman and Sean and Maritza CCTV for their support of Manikka and I as we push this out. Every time we do it, we come up with ideas of trying to do others, because it's just been so effective and such a great opportunity to get information and to talk to people as well. So thank you so much. But let me turn it over to Manikka Bowman, who's going to tell us a little bit about what's coming up in 2 weeks. And then again, I want to thank you all. So Manikka, over to you.
Yes, I just want to say it's not lost on me that we're having this conversation during July 4th weekend, and particularly in the context of, all of the magnificent leaders on this call and business owners. And, I am the descendants of slaves, and I proudly wear that t-shirt that says, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. And so when I look at every single person that's on this call, I just think about that saying, that every single last one of you, we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. So it is a privilege and an honor to be a part of this conversation with you. And we will build off of this conversation in the next 2 weeks. And we're going to dive a little deeper into this whole conversation around resources. So we're going to have representation from Berkshire Bank. They're going to come on and talk to us, and really building off what Erin said, like, what does it mean to be able to access capital, and also engage some local leaders here in Cambridge around community resources, and just be able to center our conversation so we will continue to be in a position to be able to at least survive this pandemic, because we see what's happening around the country right now. A lot of states are not being responsible as we are here in the Commonwealth, and at some point it's going to have an impact on us. So we need to be prepared when that time comes. So thank you, everyone. To be continued in 2 weeks, and I look forward to being back with my co-host, Denise Simmons, so we can continue the conversation.
It's always a joy. So Erin from Simply Erin's, Mike from the Central Square Bid, from Shagun, from Beckma, Dennis from La Fabrica Central, thank you so much. If everyone has, I hope you heard the name of each organization and will utilize them in your pursuits when you're in the dine or get your hair coiffed. Do you want to know what's there? It's in Central Square. So I hope that you will join and support our local businesses and our organizations. Stay tuned and look for some information for our next conversation, but we'll also be talking, we have a Black parent organization that's going to be we'll do a conversation with for women's suffrage. We're going to have something about 100 years and still waiting. And so I look forward to you being with us as we have those conversations. And thank you for making that reference to we are the children of slaves who made it. And so thank you for that, because in the words of a very good friend, Red Mitchell would say, without African Americans or Africans in the colonies, there'd be no 4th of July. Thank you so much, CCTV. Thank you. Thank you for those that joined us. Have a good day. Enjoy your week. Take good care. And bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.